Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next generation of retouch tools, which is located here underneath this Band-Aid. And you'll see that there's a series of tools here. We've got the spot healing brush, the patch tool, and the Redeye tool. And I have to say, all of these are really pretty useful, but only in the right situation. Just like any kind of auto tool, is that they work great for the kind of situation that they're built for. And then when you move outside that capability, they fail. And that's when you have to go to the older tools like the cloning stamp tool. So let's talk about the differences here. We'll start with the spot healing brush, and you can differentiate that from the healing brush tool just because instead of just a Band-Aid, there's a little spot right there next to the spot healing brush. And this tool works in such a simple way. There's no defining pickup or original source material. All you do, I'm going to zoom in here, is click, and that's it. So literally, you'll notice it makes a gray spot, and in fact, I'm going to make the brush smaller, so you don't want to spot heal on a bigger area than you have to. When I click, you get that dark gray. When I let go, basically what's happening is it's blending with the area around it. So in other words, it actually analyzes what is around the part that you're drawing over. So I'm clicking and dragging through this. Once I let go, it picks up similar texture from the surrounding area and blends with the color variations. So literally this tool, you just click, and you can click and drag on bigger things. So this is a really simple tool. The thing that I want to warn you about is when you get close to an edge, for example over here, you can have a problem with this when you click and drag. And can you see here that it actually did a blend with the outside edge of this photograph? So here would be an example of where I would switch back to the clone stamp tool, that the spot healer only works. I kind of use this as my mantra for this tool, is that if the pixels, like let's say right here, are surrounded by like kind, so in other words, this spot right here is surrounded by similar tone and texture, this tool works great. But if you're trying to actually go into an area that might have a difference, actually that worked pretty good. Okay, didn't prove my point. But even here, I don't know if you could see it, but there's an issue right here where it picked up the neighbor, and the neighbor isn't quite the same. So if it's within a sea of same kind pixels, this is a fantastic tool. You just go around, you can drag long bits. I actually do not suggest going through like an entire scratch or something, that you could start to have problems. So something like this, I just do little bits. So that's the spot healing brush. Now, when you get into a territory where you don't want to mix up pixels, like around here, where you have a lot of difference, you can switch to the regular healing brush tool, which is kind of the replacement for the old school cloning tool. The only real difference is that the clone stamp tool, you have to set the feather on your brush, you might change the opacity on your brush, where this Band-Aid, the healing brush tool, you still have to create a pickup point, just like in the clone stamp, but it does the blending for you. So it will actually analyze the pixels around and do the blending. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did for the clone stamp tool, which is I create a pickup point, option, and see how I get the crosshairs. When I was on the spot healing brush, you don't set any pickup point. It decides for you. Healing brush, I create my pickup point, and you can see that those crosshairs follow. So up here, same deal. right here. I'll pick similar pixels, crosshairs following. So that's kind of the updated version of the clone stamp. But again, if you don't want that blending to happen, or the blending isn't working, you want to control it yourself, I would go back to the old tool. Then there's another tool called the patch tool, which is fantastic in the right situation. What the patch tool does, and in fact I'm going to switch pictures to this windsurfer here, and let's say up in the sky here we have kind of a blotch, and rather than use any of the healing tools, what I can do is on the patch tool I click and I drag a marquee around the problem, and then drag it into a space, and it gives me, can you see how you're getting kind of a live preview here? When I do that, it will actually take an entire patch and automatically blend it, and you can see it filled in right there. I'm going to hit Command D for deselect, and so it did a pretty good job there. Also, let's say I want to get rid of this windsurfer entirely, then I can circle the entire windsurfer and just drag, and see how it's actually giving me this preview. Drag over to a spot and then allow it to blend. Now take a look at this. We have problems here. See how it didn't quite match up, and the skyline didn't match up, and I have a little bit of a mess right here. So in this case, I probably would not use the patch tool. So I'm going to teach you in the next video how to do this the old school way. But there is this patching tool is, I'm going to do an undo, is really great for much smaller and much more similar, when you have similar pixels around. So with all of these, there needs to be a similarity in pixels. Because I was trying to cover up the windsurfer, there's such a great difference. And I'm also trying to follow a mountain line, a hillside here that really is going to have to be redrawn or configured in a much more custom manner. Couple of things I want to point out before we move on is on all of these tools, again, I know I sound like a broken record, but you really have to watch what's going on up here in your options bar. One of the things is your blending mode, which affects how this spot healing applies itself to the layer below. And so make sure that you're on normal when you're trying to work with this tool in a normal way. In later videos, we'll talk about what these other blending modes can do for you. But always be checking that the tool that you're using does not have any sort of strange setting. If things are going wrong, take a look at your blending mode here. Another thing you can do is go to your icon for whatever tool you're on, and if you right click, you can reset either just that tool or reset all tools. And I really suggest this, especially when you're doing retouch, because people create all sorts of weird settings. Also, another thing is, just like when I was showing the clone stamp tool, is that you can make a choice right here. It's in a little bit of a different kind of box, but you can say sample all layers or sample just the layer you're on. Sampling all layers can get you in some trouble because you don't know what's on the layers below. And the patch tool also has an interesting option bar, which is the choice of source or destination. I was using this in the source mode, which meant I'm circling the area that I want to fix and then bringing it to a source and then letting those two things blend. And that actually worked fairly well, but I don't know if you can see there's some mismatch right there. Destination works the opposite way, where you circle your patch and then bring it over to the area you want to cover. So it just depends on your situation. I almost always set this on source. I want to circle the problem and then find a match for it. So that's the whole of all these healing brushes and patch tool. Redeye is super simple. You actually just go on it and click in people's red eyes. Again, it will fill in red with black only. So if there's variation in the eye, you may have to do that by hand or do it manually. So these are great tools. Use them when they're appropriate, but also learn the old way, which I'm going to show in the next video of how to do a patch.